Namaskar and this welcome to this exciting show of Sathology debunking mythology. And we are constantly working hard because there's so much bad propaganda or misinterpretation of Mahabharata and Ramayana and Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam. It's astounding. Even if you speak for 1,000 years, it will still come to the level. We are so deep down. So this show is again our humble attempt to clarify or clear some misconceptions. So without delay, we have the very eminent speaker, very famous one, Saraswati Films, and he goes by the handle Saraswati Films, but he's very well known across the world. Dr. Manish Pandit from Birmingham, UK.
Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram.
It's always a pleasure to have you. Very smiling and very peaceful countenance you have. And it's a great honor to have you every time you come here. So today we are going to...
Very kind of you to invite me, Aditya ji. It's my honor and it's always a great pleasure to be over here. आप बताइए फिर मैं आपको बताता हूँ कि मैं हंसते क्यों रहता हूँ.
अच्छा, वहीं से चालू करते हैं. Why you always happy? आनंद मंगल एंड कुशल.
जी, बात कुछ ऐसी है कि देखिए दुनिया में दुख बहुत ज्यादा है ना? है. हर एक को कुछ ना कुछ दुख है, राइट? एवरीबडी हैज गॉट सम. आप किसी को, मेरे एक दोस्त हैं जो अभी यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स में बहुत बड़े कार्डियोलॉजिस्ट हैं. उनका नाम है डॉक्टर शिरोडकर और वो हैं मेरे ख्याल से नॉर्थ कैरोलिना में. तो वो और मैं अभी भी मुझे याद है कैंटीन में बैठे थे 30 साल पहले ना, लगभग 25-27 ईयर्स अगो. बीजे मेडिकल कॉलेज के कैंटीन में बैठे थे पुणे में. तो वहाँ बैठे हुए चाय पी रहे थे और उन्होंने एक बात कही थी मुझे जो अभी आई वांट टू जस्ट शेयर दैट. एक चुटकुला है क्योंकि अदरवाइज मैं तो बताते जा सकता हूँ. आई कैन कीप स्पीकिंग फॉर आवर्स ऑल टुगेदर ऑन महाभारत एंड वो उस पर डिबेट आप करने को बोल दे तो मैं तो सालों साल डिबेट कर सकता हूँ. ऐसी कोई बात नहीं है, पर मतलब ऊब जाते हैं लोग. people will get bored with this if I keep talking on science. So I want to just give a little bit of philosophy. उन्होंने कहा था, देखिए इंडियन आदमी हर जगह दुखी होता है, उन्होंने कहा था. तो मैंने बोला यार ये व्हाट इज दिस. अच्छा मनीष, तुम्हें मैं बता रहा हूँ. एंड ही वाज अ वंडरफुल कार्डियोलॉजिस्ट, फैंटास्टिक कार्डियोलॉजिस्ट, वेरी डाउन टू अर्थ. इतना ब्रिलियंट आदमी था, इतना डाउन टू अर्थ था और नीचे ही झुक के मतलब बात करता था. ठीक है. तो ही हैड टोल्ड मी दिस कि इंडियन आदमी हर जगह जहां भी जाए, इंडिया में है दुखी है, यूएस में जाएगा दुखी हो जाएगा. मतलब वो दुख के वजह से ही इज प्रोग्रेसिंग बिकॉज देयर इज समथिंग टू डू इन लाइफ. अच्छा, दुख के बारे में अगर सोचें थोड़ा सा तो वो कहते हैं, देखिए आप किसी भी रिलीजन में आप चले जाएं तो कहते हैं कि दुख के सिवाय आपको प्रभु कभी भी मिल नहीं पाएंगे. अब आप मीराबाई को देखिए, ठीक है, उनके दुखों का कारण कुछ अलग ही है. आज के जमाने में अगर मीराबाई आ जाए, ठीक है, अभी आई नो वी हैव गॉट साइकोलॉजिस्ट ओवर हियर ऑन द ऑडियंस एंड हु आर लिसनिंग. आप सोचिए उनकी जो गहराई है डिवोशन और भक्ति की, कि हर पत्थर को पकड़ के वो श्री कृष्ण है. मतलब श्री कृष्ण को आप जब देख पाए विद दैट आई, व्हेन योर आई हैज चेंज्ड ना, मतलब क्योंकि आपकी जो आंखें हैं ये सबसे बड़ी आपकी दीज आर योर वेपन एज वेल एज योर वनरेबिलिटी, as well as your these are the causes of all your fall also in life, है ना. तो जो आंखें हैं हमारी, उसके द्वारा we are seeing the universe. और उनके जो आंखें थी, वो आंखों को इस प्रकार श्री कृष्ण ने बदल दिया कि the eyes of Mirabai were changed to that extent that wherever she is seeing only Sri Krishna.
मैं आपको इसका एक बॉम्बे का कहावत बोलता हूँ, बहुत हंसी आएगी आपको। माया दास सदा उदास, कृष्णदास बिंदास। So,
Fantastic.
so let's get started. So in the Mahabharata, there is we have seen a lot of misinterpretations, many stories. मैं एक
Right.
नया किताब भी लिख रहा हूँ कि महाभारत रिविजिटेड, महाभारत कंट्रोवर्सीज रिविजिटेड, मेरा किताब आने वाला है। तो उसमें व्यासदेव को ऐसा तोड़ा है लोगों ने कि व्यासदेव भी सुनेंगे कि बोलेंगे ये बेटा बोलना क्या चाहता है। ठीक है, ये वाई व्हाट ही
आपको मैं
वांट्स।
दिखाता हूँ,
हाँ,
आपको मैं दिखाता हूँ। अभी
तो
सिंस आपने शुरू किया है, तो अभी मैं, ठीक है, आई विल गो टू माय प्रेजेंटेशन इन दैट केस। एनीवे, मैं व्हाई आई वांट टू से दैट आई एम लाफिंग एनीवे इज दैट बिकॉज ऑफ दिस, कि दुनिया में इतना दुख है भाई, आप रो के क्या करोगे? मतलब व्हाट आर यू गोइंग टू डू बाय क्राइंग? यू हैव टू कीप लाफिंग दैट ओ माय गॉड, लुक लुक व्हाट हैपेंड। ये देखो क्या हुआ। मतलब और खुद पे हंसना बहुत बढ़िया चीज होती है, एंड वन शुड ऑलवेज बी ऑल्सो क्रिटिकल ऑफ वन सेल्फ। तो जितने भी आप मेरी वो प्रशंसा करते हैं, उतनी मैं खुद की निंदा कर लेता हूँ, कि मतलब निंदा स्तुति हो जाती है फिर इन दैट केस। एनीवे, आप बताइए। हाँ जी,
हाँ, so हम लोग लेट्स गेट स्टार्टेड।
शैल वी स्टार्ट?
Yes. So many misconceptions are there. So we can not cover everything one go, and Mahabharata is such a wide topic. We can just start basic principles. और आपने उपमान का बात किया था, that is
राइट।
so true. कि उपमान को और even अलंकार also people misinterpret, उसको literal ले लेते हैं। The अलंकार श्लोका is for telling you that just he is so beautiful. बट उसके आगे उसका कोई मतलब नहीं है। अगर आप वैसा पढ़ के बांसुरी पहन के गोल गोल नाचना चालू कर दिया तो सिर्फ चक्कर आएगा और कुछ नहीं होने वाला।
अभी आपने अभी बताया ये, तो व्यूअर्स के लिए एक चीज जानना बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर व्यूअर्स टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट शब्द प्रमाण, प्रत्यक्ष प्रमाण and anuman. Okay, so the word which is there in the Mahabharata, in this particular case, now shabda praman, some people split hairs and say, well, we will only use for shruti, we will not use for anything else. I personally don't think that is absolutely necessary. But in this particular case, it is important to understand the three different kinds of proof which we are taking. Shabda praman is obviously one of them, which is the word itself. Whatever the words are there in the Mahabharata is very important, which I had I have not pointed out completely, but I'll point out in this one. The Pratyaksha Praman, if it is, absolutely visible, then, well, you have to believe it, obviously. And then, of course, Anuman, which is important inferences based on reasonable observations. But Upaman, now, Upaman is a very different kettle of fish, analogies. And I will come to that in just one moment. I want to share my screen. And I will just do that so that we'll have a bit of an idea of what exactly I am talking about. So let us go to Upaman. So here it is. I can actually put this as a slideshow also, so that might be easier for you. So the danger of taking upamanas as real astronomy observations of the sky, and let me show you. This is something which I have not pointed out in completely anywhere so far, but to some extent only. So for example, there is a verse over here. This is the Gita Press version, and it says, यथा मध्यम दिने सूर्यम प्रतपंतम गवस्थिभिः. So luckily I have put the translations also for all our viewers. So basically it is sort of comparing something to the power of the sun, basically. So it is saying कि we are talking about the afternoon sun, We are even talking about the, just before the afternoon sun. And we're talking about the heat of that afternoon sun and the amount of, what do you call it? The glare which is there from that sun, right? Tatha tava sutam madhye pratapantam shararchibihi. So he's talking about somebody's armor. Okay. And what are we actually talking about is the Duryodhan compared to the sun at sunrise and sun at midday on the 14th war night. Right? Now, just imagine this. So this is after the lighting of the lamps, basically, which is occurring because in the 14th war night, what is happening is the war is continuing into the night time. And you are basically getting at that point of time the fires which are being lighted on the horses, on the chariots, and on various other parts, like even on the elephants you have got. And the Duryodhan is in fact telling the soldiers that you have to hold these lamps. So some of the foot soldiers are also holding the lighted lamps so that they are able to fight within the night time, right? So, and this is another important concept to understand, that in Mahabharata, there are verses which are telling all these things. So it is important to understand that the war did occur and it was occurring late in the night. And this sort of time is occurring, we are talking about the Vadha of Ghatotkacha. We're talking about the killing of Ghatotkacha. That sort of time we are talking about. And it is comparing Duryodhan to the sun. And at sunrise and sun at midday. But the issue is that it is the 14th war night. In fact, if you go into the entire chapter, then you will come to that those shlokas, which are right in the beginning of this. This is the chapter, shloka 15. You go to the first few shlokas before this, it is very clear. But if I take just this shloka, then I can make it look like the 14th war night was actually happening during the day. Basically, I can say that if I say that this Duryodhan compared to the sun at sunrise and sun at midday, then basically I can just say, if I don't take the context of this at all, then it will look like as if the war is actually happening not at night but during the day. So this is the danger, one of the dangers, basically. Now, I just want to show you another one of these. Now, this is the Drona's armor. And again, just, another particular analogy or upamana, which I am pointing out over here. And you can see, Prakashetayam tu tato dhvajanyam drono agnikalpa pratapana samantat. Okay. Very, very sort of clear, it is again, the Agni is reflecting of the armor of Dronacharya, right? Dronacharya is a great warrior, right? And he's fighting over there, 14th war night. He's, very clearly being mentioned in the Mahabharata text. And his armor is shining like the sun at afternoon. Now, if I don't take the sort of meaning of this shloka properly, therefore, if nobody knows anything about this text, then I can basically say this war is actually not happening in the night, it is happening during the day. And this is very important to understand, that the context of the shlokas is highly, highly important in the Mahabharata. Otherwise, you can prove almost anything. If you take upamanas, then you can prove almost anything. And let me go further on this. So, what are these upamanas? So, one second. I think I'll have to just exit that and just come here. Right. There are analogies, for example, of the fallen warriors' faces, which look like the full moon, right? So these are very important. Again, nowhere in the text does it say that these analogies are basically the full moon in the sky. So it does not say that they are actual astronomy observations. That is highly important. And there are numerous ones of these. If you go to my book, basically, so I just want to highlight my book over here, which I am giving free of cost, which is there on academia. So this book is called 3067 BCE, A Fresh Perspective on the Astronomy of the Mahabharata War. And it is available on academia. It is also available on vedicastrologer.org. The links will be put on in YouTube if you like.
Yes.
So in this particular book, in chapter 9 and 10, I have actually detailed all those verses which are falsely taken to mean that there is a full moon happening on the 14th war night. Because on the 14th war night, it is very clearly saying Tata Kumudanathena Kamini Ganda Panduna. Kamini Ganda Panduna. Right? Kumudanathena. So like the lips of a woman, of a smiling woman, not the face of a woman. Note, the lips of a beautiful woman who is smiling, which are shaped like a Cupid's bow or Kamadeva's bow, right? So that basically is the crescent moon which is coming on the 14th war night. But if I take Upamanas, so that is the real observation of the moonrise which is occurring over there, and it is a crescent moon. It is not a full moon by any chance. But if I take these observations, then these observations essentially I can easily say that instead of the waning phase moon, there is a full moon. I can say that this particular thing I ignore completely. I can just say I don't consider it to be anything at all. And if I do that, I can basically change the entire basically context of this thing. I can make the war start anywhere and end anywhere. In the sense, this can happen very easily. This is not some great. It's one of the big mistakes, but it can happen very easily. And the real observation, for example, of Kartik Purnima, which is explicitly mentioned by Vyasa, is actually happening long before the war, which is in chapter 2, verse 23 of Bhishma Parva. And you can see over there very clearly that particular verse, Purnima Sinsha Kartikim. And the context of this particular verse, which is 223 of Bhishma Parva, is very important because Vyasa is talking about this verse long before in the Mahabharata. So when Vyasa is talking long before in the Mahabharata, this particular moon or full moon can never occur in the war timeline, right? So it's highly important to do that. So anyway, there are, because there is another reference like this, which is mentioned in Drona Parva, critical edition 1918, which says that, for example, there is a comparison of Bhagadatta's chariot with pearl necklaces compared with the full moon at Kritika. And this is on the 12th day of the war, right? So if we take this to be a real observation, and there are more like this, then what will happen? What is the harm in taking all these upamanas as real observations? Let us do it. What is the problem, right? So if I do this, what happens is that the Kartik Purnima at war day 12 is followed by a Vaishakha Purnima at war day 16, is followed by a Punarvasu Purnima at war day 17. And there may even be a Chaitra Purnima just before this. Just imagine this now. So I want to ask Aditya ji. So Aditya ji, Purnima, you must be knowing that there are 12 or 13 Purnimas which occur in a year.
That's right.
Right. What if I told you that I am going to take the Upamanas to be real observations and make the Kartik Purnima happen at war day 12, then a Vaishak Purnima at war day 16, then a Punarvasu Purnima at war day 17. Then what happens? Can this ever happen in real life?
Not possible. Astronomically,
yeah, because
impossible.
Astronomy wise, this is a complete impossibility.
Completely.
This is like almost a, what can you call it? This is such a difficult thing that they are separated. The Kartik Purnima, Vaishak Purnima, and Punarvasu Purnima are separated by months in real life.
Correct.
And if you look at this shloka, I just want to point it out because these are the kind of shlokas which are being taken to prove that there is a full moon at Kartika or Kritika at the 12th day of the war. And if you look at it clearly, what does it actually show? You see, it is basically saying that the canopy of King Bhagadatta's chariot is being compared with pearl necklaces, and that is compared with a full moon. And that is compared with a full moon, not just a full moon, but a Kritika or a Kartika full moon. Like that, there are many other particular things like this which happen. And so, this is never going to happen. Those Purnimas are separated by months apart in real life and can never occur in 6-4 days. Now, the reason I say this is because this is something which a lot of Mahabharata astronomers, researchers have committed this mistake. They have taken this, and by the way, this goes against every tradition. Because Aditya ji, and all the Hare Krishna viewers who are watching this are well aware that we are talking about a Gita Jayanti on the Shukla Paksha Ekadashi, right?
Correct.
So this is highly important to note, that we are talking about that particular start of the war, never on Amavasya. Now, for a moment, however, let us take this particular Kartika Purnima, because it is very important as a researcher and to actually for one moment just say, well, let us take just one of these and actually put it in the war timeline, like this is supposed to be happening. So I think you can see this over here, this reference, the fake reference 3, I call it. But there are numerous such references. But let us for a moment imagine that there is a full moon at Kartika on the 12th day of the war. Now, there occurs a fatal mistake when this happens, because there is an actual reference in another part of the Mahabharata, which is in Vanaparva in 179:16. And as I already showed, there is another reference over here in the Mahabharata, which is saying that Vyas Guruji is meeting Dhritarashtra before the war. And he is basically saying over here that there is a Kartik Purnima which is occurring, and that is occurring before the war. So now, is the Kartik Purnima occurring before the war, or is it occurring during the war? We know, because there are 2 such references and they are actual Shabda Pramana references. We know that they are actually talking to a real astronomy observation, and they are being pointed out by Vyasa also, and they are being pointed out by Janmejaya also, right? And they're both pointing to the same Kartik full moon. And what is that other reference, So Aditya ji will be very astonished, and he would love to know this one. You'll not believe it, Aditya ji. This is the reference which disproves and makes a chutkula, a joke, out of virtually everybody who has taken the Amavasya start to the war. And I want to just point it out to you, and you will love it, and you will be, you may even fall off your chair and start laughing. It is that sort of a thing.
I'm
and
ready.
what it is, that particular reference 179:16 is saying that the Pandavas are sleeping under the full moon and they are sleeping in the Vana in Upaplavya. Now imagine the Pandavas are in Upaplavya, and this reference is talking about a full moon at Kartika on the 12th day of the war, supposedly. Because that is what we are saying. Let us assume for a moment that we are going to take it during the war timeline. Now you have got a really, really funny situation, because the Pandavas are now in Upaplavya and the Kauravas are in Kurukshetra. And who are they fighting? Who are the Kauravas fighting? मतलब भ्राता श्री, मुझे पांडव दिख ही नहीं रहे हैं यहाँ, क्योंकि पांडव है ही नहीं वहां, क्योंकि वो उपप्लव्य में है. आप समझ रहे हैं? You are understanding the situation. It's so dire. If you take these as references, that this is what happens. That particular, the Pandavas are still in Upaplavya. Sri Krishna is in Hastinapur. So another thing which I want to point out to Aditya ji, which is highly important for all the people who are watching again from all the Bhagavad Gita loving people who are watching. The Gita cannot occur for anybody taking this sort of a verse in their war timeline, because for the Gita to occur, Sri Krishna has to be at Kurukshetra, and the Pandavas, meaning Arjuna, has to be also at Kurukshetra. And if Arjuna is in Upaplavya and Sri Krishna is in Hastinapur and only the Kauravas are there in the battlefield, then how can the Bhagavad Gita occur? You see the amazing paradox. So Vyas Maharaj, because in the start of this, Aditya ji mentioned Vyas Maharaj, and Vyas Maharaj is a genius, because he would have foreseen that somebody in 5,000 years later would have come up with this sort of a hypothesis, and that hypothesis can be debunked by Vyasa Guruji himself.
Exactly.
Because Vyas Guruji himself has debunked it, because he has pointed out those other two references. Had those other two references not existed, can you imagine?
Yes, absolutely. So these shlokas are part of the 8,800 esoteric shloka of Mahabharata, which requires significant amount of insight. And so it can be only understood by Vyasa, Sanjay may or may not understand, but Shukdev Goswami. These three people understood it properly. And Ganesh, of course. So
Ganesh, of course, understands everything. So there is no there is no problem there. But you see, this is the problem with these upamanas. So if I take this full moon at Kartika, which by the way, a lot of people have done, they've all made this mistake. Imagine this. If you take the full moon at Kartika on the 12th day of the war, then it means that Sri Krishna is on the way to Hastinapur. In fact, he may or may not have arrived there yet. Arjuna is sleeping in Upaplavya, and the Kaurava army is now in your battlefield. But who are they fighting? Kaurava kisse lade? There's nobody to fight.
Yes.
You see, this is an amazing thing which Mahabharata researchers, you see. So this is why Mahabharata is such a difficult thing to fudge and fake. Because the moment you start doing it, somebody or the other, you can easily point this out. All these mistakes can be pointed out. And they are such huge mistakes, isn't it? Huge mistakes. Let me tell you now what else happens. So this is, of course, these are the kind of things which happen if we do that. Now, there is another mistake which happens. So the next pitfall I just want to point out. But before I point out the pitfall, I just want to show that there is a Balrama's pilgrimage start and a Balrama's pilgrimage end, right? And that is 42 days. Pushyena samprayatosmi, start on a Pushya nakshatra. Shravane punaragataha, coming back on a Shravana nakshatra. Shalya Parva 33:5-6, right? A lot of people say, well, we cannot corroborate it. Nobody else can corroborate it, or everybody can corroborate it, but we don't want to corroborate it. Like that, people keep going on about these things. But I want to show over here, this is 3067 BC. Every single thing which you are saying, we are pointing out, we are corroborating exactly as per the text, right? And this particular thing is starting over here on a Tritiya Chaturthi on November 1st. As Aditya ji will be knowing, and a lot of other people also know, Pushya Nakshatra is the most auspicious nakshatra of the zodiac as per the Indian Shastras.
Yes.
We all know this. And Balrama, there's no question of his not knowing it. So Pushya Nakshatra is where he will start, and he will therefore never start on any other nakshatra. It's as simple as that. Because he is trying to get the gold of consciousness. So the gold of consciousness, how is it to be acquired? One of the things which the old timers, the ancients used to do, is to try and do this as coming on a Pushya Nakshatra. Start everything on a Pushya Nakshatra. Even in the Tantra Shastra, by the way, a lot of things are done on a Pushya Nakshatra, right? Because it is considered as one of the most auspicious nakshatras from that point of view, right? And Shravane Punaragataha, he has to come back on a Shravana Nakshatra, and that is the 18th day of the war. Now, what is the pitfall? If I say, well, let me move it around. I don't need to do it in 3067 BC because in modified theory, where the war starts on 25th of November of 3067 BC and ends on 12th of December, I do not need to do all these things, right? However, if I do this, now let me try and show this. So there are two things which can be done, which are the pitfalls. Either you remove or don't prove the start point as a Pushya Nakshatra, or you remove or don't prove the end point as a Shravana Nakshatra. Either of those two things can be done, because this is so difficult, because if you look at the way it is occurring, the 14th night moonrise has to fit in that, and that is occurring in the night, and that is a waning phase moonrise. So therefore it becomes a moon which is around 5 days away from Amavasya. So that 14th night being 5 days, 4 to 5 days from Amavasya, means that the last day is either Amavasya, last day of the war is either Amavasya or close to it. Now, how stringent that condition becomes, therefore. That means that this thing over here, which is Amavasya, has to be a Shravana Nakshatra, the last day of the war. And that has to be the day of the last day of the pilgrimage. And the first day of the pilgrimage has to be Pushya. This is so difficult to do, and it has to all come in 42 days. So it has to be either 42 plus 1 or 42. Now that is so difficult. So most people say, well, we just cannot do it. We don't want to do it, and so on. We are not in that, we don't have that problem, in our theory in 3067 BCE. But this is what people do. And I just want to show you, I want to take Usain Bolt starting and ending on a 100-meter dash sort of thing. So in this 100 meters race, if I take Usain Bolt and all these runners for the 100 meters, to remove the start point for my runner, let everybody else run from here, or I remove the end point, or I remove both, then I can start from anywhere and end from anywhere, and my runner will always win. You see, so this is very important to sort of prove that you must have a start and an end point, and that start point must be a Pushya and the end point must be a Shravana. But if I remove any of these, well, would you accept it if this happened in a 100 meters race? You would not accept it, right? Similarly, I could make the end into the start point. So I could start on a Shravana and end on a Pushya. I could make all the runners running in one direction, and my runner is just going to run in the opposite direction. Will it do? Again, it is not going to happen. Well, when we don't accept it in trivial matters like a 100 meters Olympic race, which I consider it trivial because I don't care, right? Who wins and who loses. Then why should we accept it in Mahabharata? You see, this is very highly important. So we cannot accept these sort of things in Mahabharata. And why that is so important is because this pilgrimage has to start on a Pushya Nakshatra, and there is my sort of y-axis, my x-axis, and the y-axis of this is the 18 days of the war. So the war must begin near a full moon. It cannot begin on a Amavasya, and it will end on a Shravana Nakshatra and end or near Amavasya. And this sort of thing to prove is again very difficult. So I just wanted to show this as, the pitfalls which all the researchers sort of, many of these researchers fall into. Okay, before I go to the next part of the presentation, and I think we are not doing too badly for time so far, and I'm going very slowly because otherwise people will say, yaar, ye aadmi kya bol kya raha tha? Matlab exactly kuch bol to raha tha. Because this happened to me in one or two places, when I talked at speed, assuming, that everybody will just know what I'm talking about. It can be very, very problematic because the first time you show something like this, people are like, my God, what exactly is he showing? Why is he showing this, right? So this is very important. So the recap which I wanted to do, you see, there is a particular verse in Mahabharata. शुक्ल पक्षस्य चाष्टम्यां माघ मासस्य पार्थिव प्राजापत्ये च नक्षत्रे मध्यम प्राप्ते दिवाकरे. And I just wanted to point out the meaning of this verse. There is another verse, of course, which is very similar to this particular verse, which is occurring in Anushasan Parva. But this is the Gita Press verse, which is in chapter 47, verse 3, which is actually clarifying that particular verse, which which is already there in Anushasan Parva. And what is it saying? It is saying that on the Shukla Paksha, in the waxing phase of the moon, Chashtamyam, Ashtami Tithi, on the 8th lunar Tithi, Magha Masasya Parthiva. So on the Magha Masa, the Prajapatte cha Nakshatre. And so that is Rohini Nakshatra, or the Nakshatra ruled by Prajapati. Madhyam Prapte Divakare, when the sun is at midday. Exactly. At that point, what will happen? Bhishma will have his moksha. This verse, people are not aware of how important this particular verse is for the Mahabharata. I don't think I went into, because I think I talked a little bit about setting the limits of the Mahabharata. But why exactly this particular verse is so important? So just to recap, I wanted to just say that when Bhishma Moksha is at Magha Shukla Ashtami, so if you consider Magha, so the full moon is at Magha. Now, Magha is near Leo, basically. And if you take the nakshatra before and the nakshatra after, so the nakshatra before is Ashlesha and the nakshatra after is Purva Falguni, right? So if you take the full moon over there, then the sun, when this is a full moon, basically, if we take, right, then the sun is in the opposite direction. And the sun, because the sun and the moon are always, roughly 180 degrees apart, right? So the sun will be either at Shatabisha or just before in Dhanishta, in part of Dhanishta, or it will be just after in part of Purva Bhadrapada, right? And from there we know, because the sun is over there, the vernal equinox is always 90 degrees away. So the vernal equinox midpoint of this will be either at Rohini, just before or just after, right? What does that mean? It means that because this vernal equinox at Rohini, I don't know how many people recall the earlier talk which I made. When vernal equinox is at Rohini, it means that when that vernal equinox occurs, it can never go beyond 3800 BCE. In fact, some people would debate and argue that with me and say, in fact, 3200 BCE is the absolute limit for Mahabharata. The limit beyond which it cannot go. So this is highly important to understand, that there is no point in just saying, well, I am going to take a date of 8000 BCE, 10,000 BCE, 5000 BCE, 4000 BCE. It is of no use, because the Mahabharata cannot go beyond this date. It's as simple as that. 3800 is absolute maximum limit, right? So this is number one. So I just wanted to say that in fact, people will argue that with me and say 3200 is the absolute limit. It will never cross that particular limit. So that is one thing. And the other thing I wanted to point out is the significance of the Burkle crater. Because the Burkle crater, I'm not entirely certain how many people have understood the ginormous significance of this particular research. By the way, this research, it is something which made the front page of the New York Times in 2006, I think it was. It made even today the scientific world is absolutely enamored with this particular thing. And what it is either a comet or a fragment of a comet, and the impact is supposed to be in the 3050 to 2800, 900 BCE time frame. And I don't know how many of you have seen a film called Deep Impact. Aditya ji, have you seen that particular film? Yes, it is an oldish film.
I've seen
1998. You have seen it.
Yes.
And what that film is showing, I don't know whether you remember, but it shows this spectacular small fragment of a comet coming and hitting the ocean. Now, there is a reason I am mentioning this. You see, and I'm using this presentation like this because, you can see the mouse over here. Can you see this Madagascar over here? That is the red arrow is where the comet has impacted. The Madagascar coast is basically where this particular thing has gone, and the waves have gone and hit that. And there are chevrons over there, and chevrons are very very useful things to actually point out what exactly the wave, how it has gone. And what sort of a wave are we talking about? We are talking in Madagascar of approximately 1,000 feet wave. 1,000 feet. I don't know how many of you have seen if you have seen the images of any of the tsunamis which occurred 2004 in Thailand.
Yes.
That is 70, 80 feet wave, maybe 100 feet, and landfall, I don't know how much it was. Fukushima also you might have seen. Can you imagine even 1,000 feet wave? That's why I said only in one film actually they have ever tried to show something like that, which is in this particular Deep Impact film. And I want to also show, therefore, what happens. You see, this thing, can you see over here this white line which I'm trying to point out?
Yes.
This thing, you see, because there is another line which is over there, and this particular ridge, I don't know whether you're able to sort of see it. This is the other place where the chevrons are seen, which is the impact of that wave. But can you see there is nothing in the middle over here?
Yes.
And this wave is going to travel at whatever speed it will travel, and it will make landfall somewhere over here. And of course, it is not a direct hit because, it will go like this, but it will cause quite a significant impact, this particular wave. And it will go inland to a decent distance. And there are researchers who have gone into all these things in great depth. And, it is one of those things which has caused quite a commotion in the scientific world. So when it goes inland over here, for example, there is a point to which it will go before it will actually stop. And there is a point even on this side where it will go before it will actually stop, right? And all those things are reasonably corroborated. You can corroborate those things even today. And it all depends on what sort of angle the comet came down at and all those sort of things, which is slightly more difficult to actually imagine because there's only one such impact which they can calculate it on, and that is on Shoemaker-Levy and comet, which is a comet which impacted Jupiter. So I won't go into that in too much detail. But what I want to say is, therefore, it is the only event in the last 10,000 years which can cause a mega tsunami in that area. It is the only event. Forget about astronomy for one moment. Astronomy छोड़ दो. ये वाली चीज पे सिर्फ थोड़ा 2 minute का I want to put this thing. So, is there any other event which we can point out where there is a crater somewhere in that area of this size, and it is a massive crater? You're talking about a huge crater, not a small one. So Dwarka will obviously there's a possibility therefore that this is the event which is causing the sinking of Dwarka. In fact, there is no other event which can cause it, and all the other things of meltwater 1A, 1B and 1C are outside any acceptable limit of Mahabharata, even outside the 5000, 6000 BC limit, that 1A, 1B and 1C meltwater. So I will stop that bit of it over here. Now, let us just go to something slightly different, which I want to just show. Right. So now this is the other thing which we have not covered so far. I don't know.
Manish, we should do one more recording on this session.
Okay.
Put a halt. It is at slide 40.
Yes, slide 40 पे है. बिल्कुल.
Because we can do one more recording on this one because our links are going to expire in 2 minutes.
Oh, in 2 minutes. Okay. So one other thing I wanted to just show very quickly before the link expires is, some people say that Krishna departs at sharp Kali Yuga at 3102 BCE, and they have those dates 3139, 3138, 3137, 3140, etc. I want to just show you one reference. There are 17 references, but 11 of those I have shown in the first chapter of my book. And what is it? When Bhimsen injures Duryodhan mortally on his thighs, Balram and Krishna have a dialogue. Krishna says that Kali Yuga has already arrived, and that is in Shalya Parva 59:21. And look at the verse, Praptam Kali Yugam Viddhi Pratidhyam Pandavasya. Very clearly. So Kali Yuga is already started at the time of the Mahabharata war. That is highly important to understand. Over to you. I will stop the sharing over here and come back to the main screen.
Thank you so much. And I think we'll start at the slide 40 in our next Sunday recording at the same time. So viewers, do watch the next show. And today it's mind blowing. It's just simply saying that, you made me happy and made my Sunday. And this is amazing facts. The one thing I always say, philosophically, we cannot ignore the Shastra. When you ignore the Shastra, everything else becomes useless because somebody is already documenting the dates and Ganesh is writing. So when Ganesh is writing, you cannot just take the Alankar or Upman out of context. And I think that you have shown today. And I think that's the title of this video, that we cannot extrapolate, interpolate, we have to take it as it is. Because somebody else is recording the history. We are not recording the history. And the people who are speaking and the people who are recording are two very qualified people, Vyasa and Ganesh. So I think that's where we'll end the show here on this session. And next Sunday, we'll come back with slide number 40. We'll start from there. And viewers, if you want to comment on this video and you have questions for this, you can ask on the YouTube video when it is released. It will be released before next session. So please do comment. And thank you. It's a large audience today. We have 1,200 people watching. And you stayed all the while even while we were speaking Hindi. So thank you so much.
Yes,
for Hindi viewers, for Hindi viewers, it was a pleasure. I think you all loved the Hindi part. Both Manish ji and I speak Hindi very fluently. And Manish ji also speaks Marathi very fluently. And I speak Marathi a little less fluently. So thank you all and for watching the show, and do come back and join us again next Sunday. And I hope to see a bigger audience next Sunday. Thank you. Namaskar.
Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram.